Hola a todo el mundo y bienvenido a mi canal. Yo me llamo Desiree. Soy una abogada afro-latina licenciada y practicando la ley criminal, pero como todos ustedes, a mí me fascina cuando estamos hablando de casos de crímenes reales. En este video vamos a hablar del caso de Zachary Hughes. Si quieren más video en español, nada más dime allá abajo. Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. I don't know if you guys can hear it, but I'm a little bit under the weather. The show must go on though, so I decided to make this video regardless. But anyways, for those of you who are coming back, thank you so much. For those of you who are new here, my name is Desiree. I'm a licensed and practicing Afro-Latina criminal attorney who, much like the rest of y'all, has this severe fascination with true crime cases. Listen, the case we're going to talk about today is a case that I kind of have no words to describe. It's sickening, dastardly, diabolical, deviant, yuck. And that is the case of Zachary Hughes. Much like the last few videos that I've done, Zachary Hughes' case was in trial when I decided that I was going to cover it, but the trial has since concluded, okay? A lot of background information is not known about the alleged victim of Zachary's crime, and I'm saying that not to give away any hints on how the trial concluded. But let's go ahead and give a little bit of background on what Zachary Hughes is alleged to have done, as well as some background on Zachary Hughes himself. Zachary David Hughes, currently 32 years old, was born in San Luis Obispo, California. Zachary Hughes had 6 siblings. One biological brother named Eli, and 4 other brothers who were adopted, as well as one other adopted sister named Grace. Zachary mentioned that he was born into a pretty religious family, where he learned his love for music pretty early on. Zachary mentioned when he was about 4 or 5 years old, his parents brought him a used piano from a garage sale in order to kind of tinker with before he would take formal lessons, and that's where his love for music developed. Zachary said when he was 9 years old, the formal lessons actually began. Zachary's pastor's daughter, see if you could follow that one, Zachary's pastor's daughter taught piano lessons, and Zachary's father enrolled him in those. After developing his initial attraction to music, Zachary and his family would move to Amington, Virginia, where his deep desire to become a musician would only increase and grow. Zachary stated that in Virginia, his family lived on a farm, and that's because not only was his father attracted to the farm lifestyle, but he wanted to show the children the value of hard work. Let's go back just a little bit so you guys can understand this. Zachary stated that he didn't grow up with all of those adopted siblings, but instead, when he was a little bit older, and in 2005, the church that he and his family were going to were pushing the need for adoption, being pushed and urged by religion. Zachary and his family adopted 5 Russian siblings. As I mentioned earlier, one of those siblings was a sister named Grace. Zachary said that her name was originally Elena, but when they came over to America, the family wanted them to have more Americanized names, so they renamed everyone, and her name was Grace. When Zachary was a teenager, about 15 or 16 years old, the family moved from Virginia to South Carolina. Zachary stated that he was homeschooled, so he was only able to further develop his talents for music. At that time, and according to Zachary, he was practicing the piano for 5 to 6 hours per day. Further, according to Zachary, his father built him a soundproof room where he could practice because he enjoyed practicing into the early morning hours, and the father didn't want that to disturb any of the neighbors. Also, while in high school, Zachary participated in and won several music festivals. According to Zachary, In 2011, he participated in the Southeastern Piano Festival, where he won first place. Okay, so after high school comes college if you go the stereotypical route, and Zachary did. So he applied to 5 different colleges and got accepted into 3 of those 5. After weighing his options about the schools that he had been accepted into, Zachary chose to go to a pretty prestigious university. That university was Julliard! Julliard! According to Zachary, the year that he got accepted, the acceptance rate into Julliard was 7.2%. For those of you that don't know, Julliard is a pretty big deal. Julliard is a private performing arts school located in Manhattan, New York. Julliard was founded in 1905 by Frank Damrosch as the Institute of Musical Art. The school later added dance and drama programs, and later was renamed Julliard after the school's principal founder, Augustus D. Julliard. Just to further explain to you guys what a pretty huge deal this is, here are some notable graduates of Julliard. Robin Williams, Jessica Chastain, Aretha Franklin, Viola Davis, and Kevin Spacey. If I haven't already made myself clear, Julliard is a huge deal as far as music and performing arts are concerned. And the fact that Zachary Hughes went to Julliard is astronomical. It is a phenomenal accomplishment. While at Julliard, Zachary continued his love for music and participating in different festivals. He stated that he participated in an international music festival in Kyoto, Japan, that was founded by the Rome Music Foundation. Zachary further stated that 15 to 20 students from around the entire world were selected to participate in this festival, and only one of those students was American, and that was him. At some point while still at Julliard, Zachary did what I would say a lot of people who are trying to get their musical talents discovered do, and that is take it to social media, of course. Zachary created a self-titled YouTube channel where he would broadcast his musical abilities. His entire name is pretty common, Zachary Hughes. But if you type in Zachary Hughes piano on YouTube, his videos still pop up to this day, or at least as of the recording of this video. I dug a little deeper just because I wanted to see how, devoted and dedicated he was to YouTube, and the answer is probably not all that much. He created his channel in January of 2014, and he had 5 videos total on the channel. He had about 204 subscribers as well, but regardless, that was a medium for him to get his musical ability out into the general public. In May of 2015, Zachary graduated from Julliard with his Bachelor's of Music and Piano Performance. According to him, shortly after graduation, he did what most other musical talents do. and that was work at a restaurant. He just did some freelance work here and there, and then worked at a restaurant to make ends meet. 2 years later, in 2017, Zachary auditioned for and received the role of principal pianist in the Knoxville Symphony. Zachary stated that that role was relatively short-lived. He was only there for 1 year before deciding that he wanted to enlist in the Marine Corps. Zachary stated that although originally enlisting, he was quickly transferred to officer candidate school because he had his bachelor's degree. He stated he was living in Tennessee at the time, and he was the only person selected to proceed in the Marines officer candidate school during the year that he was there. If you haven't noticed my side eye, it's kind of for good reason. Because if you listen to this man tell it, he's the luckiest, most talented, most amazing, most phenomenal, most everything in the world. He's always the only one. You don't think that's weird? I mean, I digress. He stated that while he was in the Marines, he was asked to join the band, but he swiftly declined because he wanted to experience a different side of life. Again, according to Zachary, the most brilliant, talented, amazing man on earth, he received a 294 out of 300 in the physical training sections of officer candidate school in the Marines. According to him, although he was in the top 3% of over 400 students, he was unable to proceed because of some broken bones. He stated that he was told to heal up and come back, but he actually never followed through on that. Instead, while he was recovering, he was able to go back to his love for music. He continued to play for family friends at his church. He did little small gigs, and that's where he eventually met someone who will be crucial to this story. And that is a man by the name of John Mello. In August of 2020, at some point while Zachary was playing at a concert for family friends, he stated that John Mello and his daughter Aida came up to him and had a special request of a song that she wanted to hear. While Zachary was a classically trained pianist, Mello was a music producer, and according to Zachary, it was kind of like a match made in heaven. I would say more like a match made in hell, but who am I? Zachary stated that following the interaction, Mello left a business card, and Zachary would use that card to email him so they can talk more about their dastardly, diabolical, disgusting, despicable interests. Another thing that I think was pretty odd, and you guys may disagree, but I don't care, it's my channel in my opinion, is the fact that Mello was in his early 60s, 60, and Zachary was in his late 20s when this friendship developed. Friendship. Okay, you guys, so I tried super hard for you guys to figure out who Mello produced for. And although I wasn't able to see any direct names, and I'm going to say this, and I know I'm going to regret it because y'all going to be like, you said this, blah, blah. Regardless, I saw a Reddit page, so take that with a grain of salt, that said that John Mello produced for Lil Peep. Lil Peep. On October 2nd of 2020, what would have been Zachary's 28th or 29th birthday, he celebrated by taking a tour of hot dog stands with a 60-year-old man named John Mello. Zachary stated that throughout his friendship with Mello, he had met Mello in person about 5 times, and there was only one time that his daughter Aida was not present. Apparently, the tour of the hot dog stands was that one time. According to Zachary, the daughter was with her mother, Christina Parcell, during his birthday festivities. It was at that point that Mello confided in Zachary that he felt Christina was harming their daughter. After Aida's return to Mello, he did what was forbidden by the courts, and he just moved her out of the country to Italy. Mello's lineage was Italian, and he just wanted her to have a piece of her culture, I guess. I mean, that seems nice and noble, but you can't just do that absent court permission and approval, especially when there's a equally as invested and involved parent here. Zachary mentioned that after Mello and Aida moved to Italy, that kind of tapered off their communication, but it didn't completely end. In April of 2021, Mello informed Zachary that Christina was filing documents regarding gaining custody of Aida. According to Zachary, he did everything he could at that point. He decided to call up a bunch of different lawyers. He decided to clean Mello's home to make sure that he and Aida had a nice place to stay. And he also volunteered to come get them from the airport upon their return. So I find it kind of weird, okay? I'm not saying anything nefarious was going on between Zachary and this little kid, but for some dude that you met a few months to just come and tell you about his problems with his ex-wife and for you to put on a cape and be like, let me go ahead and protect this little girl who I've only known for a few weeks, seems odd to me. But according to Zachary, that's exactly what he did. Zachary stated that Aida was a special little girl, and he wanted to protect her by any means necessary. While the custody battle was ongoing, Christina began a relationship with a new man, a man named Bradley Post. Why that's so odd to me is because Christina was in her early 40s and this man was pushing 70. I mean, everyone's grown. Y'all can have your opinions on this. I think that's odd. That's odd. Although Bradley quickly became Christina's fiance, the pair was absolutely not living together. Christina lived with her daughter and her sister, Tina. Well, Zachary and Mello embarked on a journey to, quote, harass the shit out of Christina. And I'm quoting exactly what Mello said to Zachary in the over 1,700 WhatsApp messages that were recovered by law enforcement. How did they do this, do you ask? Well, they decided to distribute nudes of Christina to her family, friends, businesses she'd frequent. Just outlandish behavior. According to Zachary, when he saw the photos, he assumed that what Mello was telling him was 100% spot on. And that was that Christina was a former prostitute who would advertise her services on web pages. And he wanted to expose that because he thought it would further harm their daughter. But in October of 2021, that is when prosecutors say this harassment just went too far. On October 13th of 2021, a then 29-year-old Zachary Hughes stabbed Christina Parcell approximately 31 times to her death. Officers say that after Zachary brutally and viciously stabbed her, he scattered rose petals all around her corpse. Parcell's fiance, Bradley, was the one who made the unfortunate discovery of her dead body. Bradley immediately called the police. Unfortunately for Bradley, that didn't work out exactly as planned. When officers searched the premises, they found, how do I say this? Pornographic material related to underage individuals in Bradley's possession. And guess what? Although deceased, prosecutors and officers believe that that material was also belonging to Christina Parcell. After Christina's death, the charges just flew. Everybody got a charge. Everybody got a charge. Mello got charged with harassment. Bradley got charged for the pornographic material, and Zachary got charged with her murder. 4 years following Christina's murder, and on February 11th of 2025, the first day of Zachary's trial began. The prosecutors delivered a rather short and I'll say underwhelming opening statement.
My name is Walt Wilkins, and myself, along with Jake Hoferth, we are the prosecutors in this case. This is Detective Jared Sparkman and Master Deputy Blake Wolf. They're the co-lead investigators in this case. I want to thank you for your service and thank you for giving us the opportunity to present this case to you. The state has the obligation to prove the charges beyond a reasonable doubt. And that's the standard that you're going to hear from the judge, you're going to hear throughout your deliberations and throughout this trial. We have to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. And there's a lot of folks in this courtroom right here that you see. And so we are the prosecution. We represent the state. We have the honor of representing the state in this particular case. The defendant sits over there. That is Zachary Hughes along with his attorneys, and they represent him in this particular case. But there's many more other individuals in this case. We have the court reporter. She's very important. She is taking down everything that we're saying, recorded, so we can have a record of this entire case at its conclusion. And so that's what she'll be doing, and she'll also be marking exhibits. So if you see her over there writing on things, that's what she's doing. She's marking the exhibits in which we will identify things that we will be presenting to you for your review. This is Madam Clerk. She's involved with a lot of paperwork and handles all the evidence that we submit into the court. So she'll be handling all the exhibits that you will get to review upon your deliberation. And of course, we have the judge up here. And if you'll notice, the judge is a pretty important person. He's got a black robe. He gets to sit a little higher than the rest of us. And there's a reason for that, because he is the referee in this case. And he's going to be calling balls and strikes. He's going to be telling us what the law is. And when one of the parties has an objection, he's going to say whether you're right or whether you're wrong. And because there are rules in this courtroom, ladies and gentlemen, the rules are officiated by the judge to make sure that we maintain the rules and decorum in this courtroom and the evidence is presented to you in the proper way. But the most important people in this room, ladies and gentlemen, are you. As the judge said, you're the triers of fact. You decide what the facts are. And the great thing about serving as a juror is that you don't leave your common sense at the door. You get to bring it with you in here. And you get to listen to the testimony that'll come right from this chair right here. And you get to look at the evidence that's presented in your deliberations. And you can see it along the way of how this case progresses. You'll hear different kinds of evidence. So the judge said, you hear direct evidence and circumstantial evidence. They're both very powerful pieces of evidence. They can be used in any way in which you accept them. Direct evidence is simple. It's something that somebody can see, taste, or smell, something that they see. If you see somebody commit a violent crime, that's direct evidence that they saw that person there. Circumstantial evidence can be just as powerful. For example, if you look outside before you go to bed and you see your lawn nice and green, and you wake up and it's covered in snow and there are footprints walking through the snow, well, you know that somebody walked through your yard from the time you went to bed and the time you woke up. You don't know who it is, but you know somebody did because you can see footprints. You can derive information from that to form a logical conclusion. Another good example of circumstantial evidence is DNA evidence. If you have DNA in a certain location, you can derive that that person was at that location at that particular time. Even though no one may be testified that they actually saw him there, but the DNA shows that he was or she was there at a particular time. Very powerful circumstantial evidence. So, ladies and gentlemen, this case is about the murder of Christina Parcell. And the state intends to prove that Zachary Hughes did in fact murder Christina Parcell. And you have a number of charges that you're going to be deliberating on. You have harassment charges, you have a burglary first-degree charge, and you have a murder charge. Harassment is basically doing something that would intrude into the personal life of somebody, causing mental anguish. Burglary first degree means you went into somebody's home for the purpose of committing a violent crime. And then, of course, murder is an angry heart. We have to show that Zach Hughes had an angry heart. He was mad. And you can derive that information from any of the testimony, any of the evidence that we have that we present to you. So in this case, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to hear about a number of characters. The main character is Christina Parcell. She was murdered on October 13th, 2021. And she was living in the Canebrake neighborhood with her sister, Tina Parcell, and Christina's daughter. They were living in that neighborhood in a house in Canebrake. And Christina Parcell had been going through a very tremendous child custody dispute with John Mello since he was 3 years old. At the time, he was 9. For almost 6 years, they had been battling custody over. And that custody dispute raised to a certain level beginning in October of 2020 when John Mello and I went to Italy. And John took to Italy, and Christina fought to get her back. And in April of 2021, Christina obtained custody. And they came back from Italy, and that's how they ended up living in the Canebrake neighborhood. So the question is, how did Zach Hughes become involved in this case? Well, Zach Hughes had a relationship with John Mello starting in about October of 2020, around the time when he left for Italy. And that relationship grew. And it grew to the point where Zach Hughes began inserting himself into this custody battle at the behest of John Mello. And they began doing things like sending photos of her to the neighbors in an effort to shame her, effort to show that she's a bad mother. And as the custody dispute it elevated into a situation where custody might not go in John Mello's favor. And at that point, Zach Hughes made the ultimate decision. Ladies and gentlemen, I hold in my hand the indictments from the grand jury charging Zach Hughes with harassment and burglary first and murder. And the grand jury, Attributable of these cases, they came out, and these are the charging documents. And while the defendant at this point in this case is certainly clothed in innocence, once you hear the evidence from that chair, you hear the evidence that's presented to you, you're going to find beyond a reasonable doubt, and the evidence will show that Zach Hughes is a cold-blooded killer. And he committed murder, he committed harassment, and he committed burglary first. Thank you.
From my perspective, it left a lot to be desired. I mean, it didn't even tell a story, a complete story, at least in my opinion. Unlike many of the cases we discuss on this channel, defense did not deliver an opening statement. Defense decided to reserve their opening statement until the prosecution was done with their case in chief. Although not really common, it is 1,000% permissible. Okay, defense attorneys can decide to reserve opening until the prosecution's case in chief has completed, or one side or both sides can completely waive openings. There's no requirement to give an opening statement. So just so you guys understand, that's completely acceptable. Following their underwhelming and lackluster opening statement, the prosecution called their first witness, Deputy Chris Robinson. Deputy Robinson testified about the discovery of Christina's corpse.
I'm going to refer you back to October 13th of 2021. Do you remember getting a call to the Canebrake neighborhood?
I do.
Okay. How did you get that call?
It was just a call for service at the time. Someone called 911, and I responded to that address.
Where were you located when you got that call?
Pelham Road at the QT.
How far away is that to the Canebrake?
A couple miles, maybe.
How long did it take you to get there?
Just a few minutes.
Now, did you go with your blue lights on, or did you
Absolutely. Just for the nature of the call, yeah, we responded a license siren.
So what address did you arrive to? Do you remember?
I'm not 100% the
122 Canebrake?
That would be it, yes, sir.
And so what happened when you got there?
So Once I arrived on scene, I made contact with the complainant, Mr. Post. He was standing in the driveway. I was kind of briefly spoke to him, tried to figure out kind of what was going on. He told me that he arrived home or arrived to the victim's address when she wasn't answering her phone. So he said he went in the back door, it was unlocked, and that's where he located her. So at that point, another deputy arrived on scene. So we decided to go in there and clear. We went in the back door. He said it was unlocked. They always leave it unlocked. So that's the way we made entry. Went inside immediately. As soon as we got inside, immediately smelled some kind of chemical odor. It was kind of unusual. We weren't 100% sure what it was. I could never figure it out. But we cleared the residence. I located Miss Parcell in the living room. There was blood all over the floor. Looked like there was drag marks on the floor where she was had been drugged by her feet or drugged somehow. She had multiple lacerations around her upper, her face, her neck area.
Following Deputy Robinson, the prosecutors called Bradley Post. Bradley testified from behind bars about his discovery of his then fiance's dead body.
How did you get there?
I drove my car,
What kind of car did you drive?
Mercedes.
Is it red?
Yes,
When you drove over there, where did you park it?
in their driveway.
And when you arrived to 122 Canebrake, what did you do?
I went to the front door and rang the doorbell.
And were you able to enter?
No, she didn't answer.
So then what did you do?
I walked around the back door because frequently they'd leave the back door unlocked. And I walked into the back door.
This jury just saw the body camera of Chris Robinson. Did you see him go in the house?
See who?
Deputy Chris Robinson, the officer who you spoke to, the first person you spoke to on scene.
I may have, but I don't recall who he was because there were several people
And the
there.
door that he used, was it the door that you used to enter? Do you know what door he used?
I think they went to the front door. No, they might have gone to the back door. That's right.
And is that the door that you used to enter
Yes,
the house?
yes.
So you did enter the house?
Right. Again, I'm not sure whether it was the front door or the back door that they entered.
And so, what did you do when you walked inside the house?
It was dark, quiet, and so I walked back to, down the hallway to see if she was in the bathroom or the shower, and it was all dark. And I looked on the floor, and right at the entrance of the living room and off that hallway, there were petals from like a rose. And as I looked into the room, and I saw her on her back.
And when you saw her on her back, was there a lot of blood around the room?
Yes.
What did you do?
I walked over and yelled at her and then called 911.
And when you called 911, what were you requesting?
I told them who I was and where I was, and we needed, I guess, an ambulance or and the police assistance.
The second day of Zachary's murder trial continued on February 12th of 2025. On this day, prosecutors called Christina's sister Tina to testify about the contentious custody battle that was ongoing between Christina and Mello.
And did Christina, Parcell, and John Mello ever engage in disputes over who had rights to their daughter?
For years, yes.
About when did that custody dispute begin?
They broke up sometime in October of 2015, and I know that she had a family court deposition in March of 2016, so almost immediately would be the best I could put it.
So about the time y'all reconnected, she was already engaged in disputes with John Mello over the custody of her daughter.
I don't believe that I don't believe they had begun in 2014 when she first started reconnecting with our family, but within that next year, shortly after they broke up.
So from that point on, were you I don't want to say involved, but were you aware of the dispute, and did you support your sister during that time?
Well, sure. Not financially, emotionally, or, you know, because we had been estranged for 4 years, that is, it sounds so trite. It's a big hurt. You know, that this is my baby sister, and I'm trying to find a way to put her back in my life. So even though she was going through this custody battle, I was also kind of trying to get over my hurt feelings with her. So we interacted, but we weren't, again, you know, tied at the hip best friends at that point.
And so as time goes on, did the custody dispute continue?
For years, yes.
A Greenville County homicide investigator further testified that he received surveillance footage, that placed Zachary at the scene at the time of Christina's murder.
Now, after you spoke with Mr. Manigault, what did you do?
I began researching Zachary Hughes.
And so how would you go about doing that?
So I started, I just did a basic Google search of Zachary Hughes, Greenville, South Carolina.
And what'd you find?
I found,
May we approach? Sure.
yes, sir.
So, Master Deputy Wolf, in trying to locate Zachary David Hughes, what did you do?
So I began by just doing a basic Google search of something along the lines of Zachary Hughes, Greenville, South Carolina. The first thing I noticed is there were several articles online about him being a pianist, being famous for being able to play music by memory.
And then once you had that information, what did you do?
So then I logged into my South Carolina DMV online account, and I obtained a picture of Mr. Hughes' driver's license, his DMV photo. I showed that photo to Mr. Manigault just to confirm that I was looking at the same Zachary Hughes that he was referring to.
Was it confirmed?
Yes, sir.
So once you've confirmed the person that you're looking into, what do you do next?
Well, I continued to look at his DMV online account, and one thing that I found was important is the address on his driver's license was 200 Tyndall Avenue. 200 Tyndall Avenue is located within the city limits of Greenville. A few months prior to Ms. Parcell's murder, the Greenville Police Department had installed traffic cameras around the city. So since he lived in the city, I believed if he had a vehicle, there would be some photos on these traffic cameras of his vehicle. So also using my South Carolina DMV online account, I found that he had a gold 1999 Ford Ranger registered to his name. So the city uses a traffic camera system, some people call them license plate readers, LPRs for short, called flock. When you pass a flock camera, it takes a picture of your license plate in the back right side of your vehicle, and then it goes into a database that's searchable. So once I had Mr. Hughes' license plate from the DMV, I entered it into the flock system. At that time, flock had a retention period of 90 days, and I found 55 images of Mr. Hughes' vehicle.
Now explain this, Jerry. So how many flock cameras are there around Greenville County?
At that time, they were just in the city, I would say maybe 10 to 15.
Okay, so we only had 10 to 15 cameras in the city limits.
Yes, the county had not yet employed any flock cameras.
And now you say you have access to this flock camera system. Is this a nationwide system or a local system?
Yes, so Flock is a national company. They sell these traffic cameras to law enforcement agencies across the country.
All right, so after you searched a car registered to Zach Hughes, what'd you find?
So I found the 55 images of his vehicle during that 90-day retention period. I found 2 images the day of Ms. Parcell's murder.
The third day of Zachary's trial continued. on February 13th of 2025. On this day, prosecutors called numerous law enforcement witnesses to show the jurors the naked photos that Zachary and Mello were distributing across the world, quite frankly.
So is this the envelope that you received?
It is.
All right, whose name is on there?
Brad Post.
All right, and did you ever determine whose P.O. box that is?
It's Brad Post, P.O. Box.
All right, and up here, is there a date? Can you read the date?
Wednesday, June 30th, 2021.
And what does it say above that?
Greenville, I believe it's PNDC 296.
Now, did you look inside the contents of this envelope?
If it was opened, I did. Yes, sir.
All right, I'm going to show you what states is marked as 1C. Ask you if you recognize that.
I do.
Okay. And what is that?
It's one of the pages that was in the envelope.
Your Honor, state moves 1C into evidence.
No objection.
All right, no objection. 1C comes into evidence.
All right, let's take a look at State's Exhibit 1C. All right. Now, what did your investigation reveal as far as what this particular photo was?
It appears to be a screenshot of an escort site.
And can you describe what's on there? Whose name is on there? Websites?
It appears to be an advertisement for the name Caroline Warren.
That right there?
Correct. And the part that's kind of squared right here is a URL for belladonna DiGiorno.escort-site.com.
All right. And then what about the words above that?
It's basically an advertisement for an escort. It says, "Okay, Georgia boys, I'll be concluding a quick Alabama tour and was considering spending a day in Hotlanta. Question is, are you men ready for me? I have very limited availability at an upscale in-call location, so get in touch with me soon so we don't miss out on each other."
And so your experience as an investigator, what is that asking to do?
It's an advertisement for an escort, or just more specifically, prostitution advertisement.
The fourth day of Zachary's murder trial continued on Valentine's Day of this year, February 14th of 2025. On this date, prosecutors called their medical experts to testify as to the cause and manner of Christina's death.
Finally, Dr. Rose, what was your conclusion as to the cause and manner of Ms. Parcell's death?
So the cause of death was multiple sharp force injuries, and the manner of death was homicide.
The fifth day of trial continued on February 18th of 2025. On this day, defense and prosecution were having argument as to the admissibility of the pornographic material the prosecutors alleged was in possession of Christina as well as Brad. The sixth day of Zachary's murder trial continued on February 19th of 2025. This day I thought was a complete doozy, because unlike the cases that we've covered on this channel, Zachary decided to take the stand in his own defense.
It was only becoming prolonged, and I had to do this in order to save Aida. So I don't remember how many times I struck her. I just remember that when it finished, we were on the ground, and I stopped striking her when she stopped struggling. And at this point, I stood up, and I was still freaking out, and I was in kind of a daze. And I was just trying to pull myself together and figure out what I needed to do to leave the house. And again, I wanted to make sure that I didn't leave anything behind that would connect me to it, because then I believe John would be connected to it, and it would only further put Aida in danger, because I didn't know if Christina Parcell was the only person involved in what was happening to Aida. And she wasn't. So I quickly looked around to make sure I hadn't left a mask or a glove, and I started to pick up the rose petals and realized that I just didn't have time to do that. Again, I was concerned that a neighbor might have heard the commotion and that a neighbor might come by to investigate, and I didn't want that. So I drew the blinds and I moved her body away from the door, which had windows, because I didn't want someone to come to the door and see her. And I put my things back in the backpack, and I looked in a mirror before I left to make sure everything was in order, and I saw that she had scratched my face in the struggle. And of course, I realized that this could leave DNA. So I used the paint thinner to try to clean her hands. And then I changed my mask, and I took off my outer shirt because there was blood on it. And I put it in the backpack. And at this point, I was really worried that someone, that Lutina might come back to the house, or Brad Post might come to the house, or a neighbor might come over. So I was trying to leave the house as quickly as possible. And before I left, when I realized that I had probably left my DNA there, despite my effort not to, I prayed again and just said that I believe that what I've done is the right thing, and I believe that I did it for the right reason. But if it's your will that I be connected to this, then I will turn myself in, and I will own up to what I've done, and I'll take responsibility for it, because I believed that it was the right thing. And then I left. I exited out through the door, and I got back on my bike, and I pedaled my bike back to the truck, and I drove back to the mountain house. And I was still completely freaking out, and it felt entirely surreal. But there is a big difference in how I felt, in that as soon as I left the house, I felt the most enormous wave of relief wash over me, because I knew from that moment on, Aida would be safe. Aida would be safe from the sexual abuse that her mother was perpetrating on her. And there is proof to that the state is hiding from you.
Your Honor, instruct him to be quiet.
Okay, you need to stop talking.
In my experience, it's pretty rare for a defendant to take the stand in their own defense. And why is that? Well, because when you take the stand, you place your own character at issue. And why is that important? If you have prior felony convictions or prior convictions for dishonesty or perjury, they are allowed to be revealed to the jury. So I guess in a sense, because according to numerous articles, Zachary had no convictions of any kind, he was perfect to take the stand. When listening to Zachary's testimony, I found him to be scripted. It sounded rehearsed. He sounded dishonest. I didn't believe much of what he was saying. He sounded even-keeled, but also very creepy. I don't know. I think he came across as incredulous, dishonest, unlikable, unbearable. I don't know. Long story short, I don't think he did himself any favors. Also, during his testimony, he mentioned the allegations against Christina relating to child abuse and child pornography, despite being told by the court not to do that. Ultimately, the court held him in contempt and ordered him to serve an additional 6 months incarceration. The seventh day continued on February 20th of 2025. During this day, the prosecution did a brief cross-examination of Zachary, and both sides closed.
This is the moment where myself and the defense have an opportunity to speak to you directly. It's called our closing statement, our closing arguments. All the evidence that you're going to hear in this case, you've already heard it. It's either sitting right here or it's through testimony that you've already heard. And so my goal here is to just talk a little bit about this case with you and sort of explain the state's perspective and how we have proven beyond a reasonable doubt that Zach Hughes did in fact commit the crimes that he's alleged to have committed. And I'm going to go through those crimes a little bit, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And then I'm going to go briefly through the evidence and explain my perspective on those things. I will give you a bit of a caveat that this is a little bit of a unique case in that you rarely have the defendant testifying and admitting to the entire crime during the trial. So in that respect, my closing argument may be a little different or maybe a little abnormal than our normal way we do things, but I'm going to do my best. I first want to thank you for your service. It's been a long 2 weeks. Y'all have been extremely attentive. You've paid attention. You've listened to the judge. And to be frankly, I couldn't ask for a better jury, and I appreciate your service. On behalf of my co-counsel, Mr. Jake Hoferth, Investigator Jared Sparkman, and Master Deputy Blake Wolf, we thank you for your service. Now, I told you in my opening statements that once you see and hear all the testimony in this trial, and I did not know that the defendant was going to testify, you're going to find that Zach Hughes, I don't know if you remember what I said, is a cold-blooded killer. And I submit that the state, and along with the testimony of Zach Hughes, we did in fact prove all of that beyond a reasonable doubt. Zach Hughes is a cold-blooded killer. Zach Hughes is an admitted cold-blooded killer.
Lot of in the state's closing, lot of moral indignation. That, what do you mean try to be humane? Who can say that? How does that even mean, right? I was not in Zach's shoes. Nobody was in Zach's shoes but Zach. Nobody was. None of us has been in a circumstance where we have reason to believe an innocent child is being abused by her own mother, where her father is out of the country, the evidence is shown, with a warrant pending, can't come back. When you write an affidavit to try to put the authorities on notice as to what you believe is happening, when you call DSS and DSS does nothing, none of us have been presented with that circumstance. Mr. Wilkins said, we can't condone vigilante justice. That's what he said. He said, if you find him not guilty, I'm going to be out of a job. Right? It's really interesting. The state wants you to be a legislature and make decisions for the people of the state in law and order. But they don't want you to be a jury when it comes to deciding how the law applies to the facts. Because they just want you to assume he's already confessed to it, He's guilty of a crime. They use the word murder throughout, which is a legal phrase, which is an offense that you have to find. So they want you to speak for the people of the whole state, but they don't want you to really look at the evidence. And that's what we're asking for. That's just what we're asking for.
All in all, it took the jury less than 3 hours to deliver their verdict.
Your Honor, these are case numbers 2024 GS 23 2194, 5425A, 5413, 5412. As to the charge of murder, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty. As to the charge of possession of a weapon during the commission of a violent crime, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty. As to the charge of burglary first degree, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty. As to the charge of harassment first degree, we, the jury, find the defendant not guilty. As to the charge of harassment second degree, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty. As to the charge of conspiracy to commit harassment first degree, we, the jury, find the defendant not guilty. As to the charge of conspiracy to commit harassment second degree, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Signed by our foreperson.
Zachary's attorneys stated that they plan to appeal this conviction. I will say, this case is just sickening. It didn't even have to happen, much like all of the cases, but this one really didn't even have to happen. Zachary was a bright young man, super talented, super driven, and instead of focusing on his own talents, he decided to get involved and become an interloper in a custody battle for a child he had no connection to. It is insane, and my mind is blown. Regardless of what Christina is alleged to have done, she didn't have to die in this manner. My heart goes out to all parties involved and all family members that were affected by this. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Until next time, take care.